Welcome to Talk Commerce, where we explore how merchants, agencies, and developers experience commerce. This week, we interview Tom Robertshaw with Space 48. He gives us a little history on his e-commerce survey that he started publishing while he was still at university. We get into the ever-growing community on BigCommerce and talk about BigCommerce and BigCommerce apps. And how could I talk to a Magento master and not bring up a little bit about Magento? Magento Creative, partnering with the client to help fulfill their strategic growth, serving the world as an Adobe Gold partner and BigCommerce Elite partner. Magento, the code of commerce. This episode is sponsored by eWay Corporation, the partner of choice for technology, infrastructure, and enterprise-level digital solutions. An AWS Select Consulting partner, eWay Corporation, forward together. My name is Brent Peterson, and I'm your host. Please remember to subscribe wherever you download your podcasts. And now, Talk Commerce. Welcome to Talk Commerce. Tom Robertshaw coming live from Bath, England. Tom, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom, Innovation Director at Space 48.
Excellent. So Tom is here today to talk a little bit about BigCommerce and some of the things he's been doing in BigCommerce. Tom, tell us a little bit about your background, where you got started, and where you're going.
Sure. If we go way back, I realized yesterday that it's been 10 years since my last exam studying computer science at University of Bath, and it was around that time that Magento was really sort of coming to the forefront of the e-commerce ecosystem. And me and a buddy, Nick, decided that this would be a good idea. People make money with e-commerce websites. That seems like a good gig to get into. And yeah, then for many more years after that, we ran a Magento agency called Meanbee, which eventually was acquired by Space 48. And we've gone through the Magento 1 to Magento 2, which we still continue to support and build new stores on top of. But also, naturally, as the sort of e-commerce journey has changed and e-commerce marketplace has changed, we've moved to other platforms as well. So we support things like Shopify, BigCommerce, and we also have some experience in shopware in the past as well. So yeah, it's been a journey of platforms, journey from kind of running a business to kind of being within a larger business. I kind of acted as a managing director, sort of CEO initially, and then moved to Space 48 and became an e-commerce consultant, sort of guiding other merchants and internal team members on how to approach projects based on my experience, and now it's changed again, particularly over the last years. Obviously, a lot has changed, but I've moved into working on apps, particularly for the BigCommerce platform, and that's meant that I've kind of thrown away some of the old hats, but picked up a lot of new ones, being sort of back to being a startup within a business. So I'm kind of back to coding, back to sort of product management, deciding what we're going to build, testing, a bit of everything thrown in. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah, it's such a journey. I remember one of the things that you did originally, or one of the things that you were known for, was a survey that you did of e-commerce platforms across the internet, across the world, right? What got you motivated to do that?
That was, if not close to the final year of my university education. So we were looking to, should we graduate to this agency thing that we'd started on the side, and sort of nights and weekends. And so I decided, I'd had experience working at a company called Netcraft in the past, and they're very famous for their internet surveys. And so with that sort of background and contacts, I decided to write my own, to look at, with the Alexa Top 1 Million, let's write some Perl scripts and some regex to see what we can find in terms of Magento usage. And yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind coming home from your lectures, and then seeing that Roy Rubin has commented on your blog post. So that was very nice. Yeah, strange experience, and I'm grateful that I was able to continue that on for a good few years.
Were you hoping that it would at some point you would get acquired by Gartner and be one of the Tom Robertshaw Gartner survey experts?
I won't deny that definitely crossed my mind at one point. When we were thinking about what it could turn into, because for a short time we did run it as a second business, but realized it's hard enough doing one, let alone two. So we went back to a core focus. But funnily enough, like things kind of come around. The HTTP archive. They do a sort of a state of the web report each year and have done for the last couple of years. And they're just organizing the 2021 edition. And they were looking for authors for the e-commerce chapter. So I saw Alan Kent, who previously of Magento, now of Google, talking about it and looking for help. And so I've volunteered. And so we're going to be looking into using that runs Wappalizer across the sites in the Chrome UX database. And then you get performance data out of that as well. And so we're going to be producing a report, the state of e-commerce. So it feels a little bit of a flashback. I'm excited to get involved with that.
Yeah, and I've been working with Alan Kent a little bit on some of the PWA stuff. And I know that he's still very passionate about the community, and I'm happy that he went from eBay to Magento to Google and has landed and is continuing his role in some community-led projects. From the community side of Magento into BigCommerce, do you see a big difference in how those are happening? And do you think there's a space eventually for what you're doing on BigCommerce in building a community?
It's much smaller, I would say. I think it's fair to say that it's smaller. It's smaller in its journey. I appreciate the company has been around and the platform has been around for a little while, but it's seen somewhat of a revolution over the last couple of years as it's moved to target a slightly different size merchant, and it's adjusted its kind of its feature set and its direction towards sort of more mid to enterprise businesses. But I think it's the early stage. They do have developer advocates to try and sort of rally the troops and support each other. And they're very proactive in sort of linking people together with questions on Stack Overflow, the support forums on BigCommerce. And I think it's currently essentially a closed beta. They're running a Slack group where there's almost 600 people 600 developers, where people can ask questions and get answers, and so you can kind of request for access to that. And that feels like this kind of the start of a growing community with some that are, as I say, old hands that have been there through many years of BigCommerce, and then those like myself that are fairly new. So it's different, and I think it's got a more Western and Australian, given its heritage, bias compared to perhaps our prior days at Magento, which given it the kind of the access and the how kind of international friendly it was from day one, almost day one, then you know that community spread across Europe in particular as well.
One interesting thing that I've learned in the last month or two just doing these interviews is that there's a robust Shopify community, or there's a stated robust Shopify community. I've yet to find it. And I think one of the things that Magento did well or does well is outreach. And so what the developer advocates in BigCommerce, and I guess I haven't had that experience yet. We're still fairly new to BigCommerce, but from a community standpoint, the developer outreach or the outreach from Magento originally was organic, but was also very robust. So I'm wondering your experience between the two. How did you got introduced to BigCommerce? How, and how was that different from Magento?
I'm actually not sure the first time. Like, I think I've been aware of BigCommerce for a number of years and like kind of experimented with it, but it's only been in the last 2 years that we've looked seriously at it, and that's because of kind of our customers that have been taking it more seriously, and we're going through a migration process. So it certainly wasn't sort of developer first in the sense of my sort of discovery of it. I would say that I think with Magento, it's easy to conflate like community with like open source and the fact that like developers can contribute to it. So it's fair that the people that surround themselves or surround Magento they are there in part because they can, many of them, because they can contribute back to the code base, or quickly share an open source module, which is less likely to happen in closed source like SaaS systems like Shopify and BigCommerce. Still possible. I'm sure there are open source like scripts out there for helping sort of get data in and out or doing things with their APIs, but they are more geared towards kind of making some money out of your product or your on the platform.
Did you think that so let me just rephrase this. When Magento 2 came out, did you think that the decline of users would happen as quickly as it did? Instead of people just adopting Magento 2, they sort of flocked to some other platforms?
I think I was worried. And certainly at that point, I was still running Meanbee. And so I think it's fair to say that we weren't in a rush to do Magento 2. There were some agencies that, you want to be at the bleeding edge because it's part of their brand and they've got to be seen to be there. But there was certainly a few of us that were kind of working with the platform and trying it out and thinking, I'm not sure I'm ready to be kind of pushing this yet. And so we didn't rush for encouraging people to move to Magento 2 yet. There was firstly that it's easy to say wait because it's a completely new platform. Let's leave it for 6 months or maybe a year and let it. Everyone understands that new technology has bugs. But then you get to the end of that year and you're like, well, I'm still not sure I would encourage. And so that's where it gets difficult because at some point you have to decide whether or not you're behind this platform or not. And can you confidently sell it as the right solution to the merchant that's come to you asking for a new store? And that was a difficult one. And there were many times when we had to rethink our approach because we'd come out of university, stumbled on Magento and thought, well, like this is the one size fits all e-commerce platform. Why would you ever choose anything else? And that was relatively true for Magento 1 and for the alternatives that were available at the time. But then it increasingly became such that when Magento 2 was out and with all the kind of the issues that kind of faced particularly early on, you have merchants coming to you that don't need the complexity, and so they don't get the return on investment of such a kind of unwieldy platform. And so that's when we initially started looking at Shopify, to be honest, because we recognized that some merchants, the budgets they were looking to spend sort of look after their site, they didn't want to spend those just spend all of it on just maintenance and patches, which is completely fair. They needed something that was simpler, was going to do most of what they wanted, if not all. And so that's when we looked at alternative platforms. So yeah, it was a tricky time, particularly for agency owners, and continues to be.
And I know we were going to make this 100% about BigCommerce, so let's now move into 100% BigCommerce. And just as a plug, or no, not as a plug, as a dig, the BigCommerce guy keeps telling me he's going to send me swag. So I'm going to continue to wear my Magento Masters shirt in all of our calls. And I have my little Magento badges here on my microphone until I get some BigCommerce swag, and I'll wear that on camera. All right, so the Magento 2 came out. A lot of customers decided that they've learned it's very expensive and it's very difficult sometimes to move from M1 to M2. And then you also mentioned Shopify. What made you decide to go with BigCommerce instead of Shopify for new builds?
To this day, it still depends on the merchant. So as I say, we are still doing Shopify Plus stores as well as BigCommerce stores. It goes through that. There's a discovery process and platform selection process that we take merchants through. And like one way that I look at it is I sort of go through the evaluation process where you first consider like Shopify because it's the largest it's the largest platform, but it's and you could consider it as kind of very reliable for the feature set that it provides. But quickly, I find that it just doesn't have the features that most merchants that I typically work with expect. It's surprising to hear that wishlist isn't out of the box, like that categories don't work the way that you expect them to work, that filtering doesn't work the way you expect it to work, and promotions, you kind of can't do those without a developer. And so while for very small businesses or simple businesses, simple e-commerce, Shopify works well. It very quickly then, for me, it moves to BigCommerce because it has more of those features that we expect as just the standard in e-commerce, and then only if BigCommerce can't do what you're looking for, and you really have some complex technical requirements, then we look to Magento.
So I guess then I feel as though BigCommerce is just as easy out of the box to set up and use as Shopify. And if BigCommerce always has more features, why would you ever, in your platform choosing, why would you ever choose Shopify?
That's a good question, and I would certainly make my vote for BigCommerce, particularly when there might be features that you're not using yet. We know that it has a lot out of the box, so that it's available to you once your business grows. They're there already. So I certainly would recommend BigCommerce. There are other opinions that I can kind of acknowledge where I want to use the best of breed in terms of technology. I want to use a technology that is well proven, and it's hard to deny that Shopify has somewhere in the region of 1.7 million stores versus BigCommerce's 70,000. So in terms of stability in the platform, it's fair to say that Shopify has got kind of proven numbers, and so I can't deny that, even if I would be biased towards BigCommerce right now.
Yeah, so my experience so far, and we are now a BigCommerce partner focused mainly on Mexico at the moment, but in the Mexican market, the reason people go with Shopify is because they're really good at marketing.
Yes,
and
they've
being
got a
good
lot
at
of money in the
marketing
bank.
and then having some of that volume behind you helps you to be a larger leader in that sector because of the amount of people. You can't deny that amount of people makes it a strong platform. It doesn't make it necessarily a better platform.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the other things that I've been learning about Shopify. Well, let me just say SaaS versus Magento in general. Magento, unfortunately, in the last 5 years, has gotten a reputation of being somewhat slow. However, I have learned from interviews with some other Shopify people is that Shopify can be equally as slow or slower, and you have to pay attention and you have to spend some time to make sure that the site is performing well. Tell us about your experience in performance on the SaaS platform.
Yes, yeah. Well, specifically BigCommerce, I think I don't think I haven't come across having the same problem with Liquid as you discussed on a previous episode in Shopify. But yes, performance. The more code you have, the slower your store is, regardless of what platform you're on. The benefit on SaaS is that you don't have access to the sort of core code base, so you can't do something horrendous when it comes to the code base that is going to create poor performance. But what tends to happen then is all kind of the third-party applications, their access to make modifications is in JavaScript more likely, and so your performance is not going to be, any performance degradation isn't going to be on the sort of server-side response, which is you might be more familiar with in the Magento land, where you're kind of looping through lots of models or something like that, and a large collection. And that creates kind of the slow initial response. But in SaaS land, you might have a lot of JavaScript that is running, which means you might kind of have all the HTML, but there's lots of third-party scripts to fetch and then kind of areas of the page to modify. And so your sort of time to interactive might be slower instead. So yes, I think with regardless of your tool set and what's available to you, it's still perfectly possible to make a slow store. But yeah, there's definitely some benefits to SaaS that your hands are tied a little bit more, and sometimes that's a good thing.
So moving on to what you're doing now, you're doing apps on the BigCommerce stores. How do you see that being different than what it is for Magento? Or maybe I'll just make it simpler. Can you explain to our general users the difference between an app on BigCommerce and a Magento plugin or extension?
The most exciting thing for me is that it's very easy to install. So it means it's really easy to try new apps out. In the Magento world, when you kind of have a need, you look on the extension marketplace. You might choose based on kind of reputation, on reviews, on price point, and the features that are described, and sort of make a choice there before you get your agency involved, because you know that there's then going to be a development cost in terms of them installing the app, perhaps integrating it with other apps that you or extensions that you have. And so you want to kind of only ask them to do that job once, and you want to then say, oh, actually, I don't quite like that extension now, I have it installed, let's try the other option. One of the things that excites me around BigCommerce apps is that the barrier to entry is a lot lower, because the merchants can literally browse the app store, choose the one they want, and I'll kind of be offering a free trial and free on sort of sandbox non-production stores, so that merchant can really kind of move quickly with their business and try an app out, not have to get the agency involved in. And if it's sort of admin functionality, particularly, they don't even need to get the agency involved to do any sort of integration. So I like that from a point of view, that merchants can move a lot more quickly with their business, and I guess from the business side of it, from my business side of it, the lead time for a sale is a lot shorter, because I'm not trying to win them over to my app and then find that I've got to wait a month for the lead time on the agency to install it. So that's pleasant as well.
Yeah, I can't remember who I was talking to, but we spoke about Magento Connect and the fact that in Magento 1 you could theoretically install a module in admin and then break your store, and then nobody could get back into it unless you're a developer.
Yeah.
That I'm assuming that doesn't happen on BigCommerce. Well, it doesn't. I know it doesn't happen on BigCommerce, so I shouldn't even say I'm assuming that. So the app experience, would you say it's more similar to the way it works on WordPress, where you can install some extension and try it, and then if it doesn't work, you can delete it?
Yes, so you can uninstall it very, very easily as well. I would say that kind of my gut feeling is that it's more reliable. I know the WordPress plugin market can have its own issues, because it's still sort of installing that code on your WordPress site, whereas any BigCommerce app, all it's really doing for the most part, particularly again kind of admin area apps, they're just communicating with BigCommerce APIs. They're not sort of adding code to your site, and so they're far less likely to sort of interact negatively with each other.
I was listening recently to Commerce Party, Karen Baker's podcast, and she was interviewing Christoph Ringleff, and they were talking about an early hackathon at Magento, and how there was I think Karen was working on an extension called Magento Trash that really uninstalled a module instead of just pretending like you uninstalled it, but it still runs completely in the background. I think people aren't aware about those type of issues on Magento, especially on Magento 1, when you go into admin and you click, or you just go and you disable the module. It's just disabling anything that happens in admin, but it's actually still running in the back end, which was one of the most frustrating things about the Magento and how it was architected originally. Okay, so back to BigCommerce apps. So how do you come up with the ideas? kind of going back to the community, and where I think the BigCommerce community could shine would be something around innovations, and how those ideas get kind of put forward, and then how do you monetize that?
I think I'm kind of hoping with these groups that are sort of popping up as I learn more about who's kind of in the community, whether or not we're connected or not initially. I'm hoping that provides opportunity to kind of encourage other people to kind of share solutions. I was always surprised when I spent about 3 months in Chicago a few years back. And at that point, I thought it was a great idea, a great opportunity to sort of meet a completely new kind of area of kind of the people that are working in e-commerce. But I was surprised how just slightly different culture, kind of UK versus US, where just meetups weren't so common, whereas it was much more common over here to have like a Magento meetup or a PHP meetup, where those sort of ideas can thrive and get encouraged and people can share. Whereas when I went to Chicago, there was very few, certainly in kind of the e-commerce space. So I think it is a cultural thing, but I'm hoping that I can do and play my small part in terms of helping other people out, answering questions, encourage people to share. And so when as I progress through this BigCommerce apps and I learn more about BigCommerce, I want to share it, whether that be in some of the videos I've already been doing, blog posts or deep dives in terms of how to achieve certain pieces of functionality. And then maybe if there's some sort of common tasks that I can share as a script that consumes BigCommerce's API that I'm not looking to productize or monetize, then I'll do that. So I think the space is still there to allow people to experiment. I appreciate with apps versus extensions. Extensions are code that you share that other people then have to take care of. Whereas with apps in BigCommerce, you have to host them somewhere to be able to kind of use them. And so there's that extra step between kind of getting an extension or getting an app and then making use of it. But I hope to encourage that.
And are you looking at the app as sort of a one-time install and get paid for it? Or are you looking at a SaaS model where somebody gets a subscription to that particular app and then you're measuring some throughput or something like that?
Yes, I'm looking at both and sort of evaluating it based on kind of the particular product. Again, because it's SaaS, you have that benefit of installing and uninstalling and choosing. So you're sort of renting functionality. And so that's why the monthly fee makes a lot more sense. So you have that sort of lower entry fee. And then because you don't have to worry about the hosting or uptime or upgrades or anything like that, I think that deserves that sort of service fee. And then, as soon as you don't want it anymore, you want to remove that technical debt, as it were. I don't write technical debt. All my code is technical debt. Then you can uninstall it and stop paying for it.
All right, I'll make one comment on technical debt, and this is directed to Magento 1 users. There's a lot of Magento 1 users who feel as though the 10 years of technical debt, we'll call it technical debt, they have on their original store should just transfer to Magento 2. This is a rant, by the way. all that time and money they spent in 10 years on their Magento store should just equally transfer to their new platform. And let's just call Magento 2 a new platform. It's not an upgrade, it's a new platform. So regardless, if you've spent $50,000 a year on maintaining and upgrading your website in 10 years, take that and transfer it to your new store, and it most likely in the same exact look and feel is not going to happen again for less than the amount of money you spent. You're going to have to put some significant investment in that new store to make it look and feel and do what your old store did exactly. Anyways,
you mean I can't just remortgage to Magento 2?
You can definitely remortgage. Absolutely. Yes, you can go to Magento 2 and buy and get a new mortgage to redo it. And if you've spent $500,000, chances are you should spend 150 to 200,000 to make your store exactly like it was. that's sort of I don't know, that's my little rant. It's probably not that's probably that those costs don't equate exactly, but I also feel as though people expect that. However, as we're moving into this SaaS world, you mentioned, I know that we talked about Shopify. It was Mark Lewis that we had on the interview, and he talked a lot about putting boundaries around what customers can choose. And I think that's one of the most important parts, is that Magento lets you choose whatever you want to choose, and then you can just do it, and then cost be damned, right? So let's add 70 modules, and then let's maintain that over time. And let's then question, why is our site slow and why is our upgrades expensive? Can you comment a little bit about adding 70 extensions onto BigCommerce and how that impacts your cost and, of course, your performance?
I haven't come across any BigCommerce stores with that many apps or extensions installed, but I think comparing it to the Magento days, I think that's less likely to happen. I think that if you do have a kind of a series of apps, it's less likely to cause the performance bottleneck because of the API approach, rather than kind of everything being in the underlying code base. What else there is there to say on that? I think we can still have the performance problems, going back to what we were talking about before from the front end. So the more apps you have, your server response might still be quick, but you might have a lot of JavaScript running, and compatibility between things. So if you've got lots of JavaScript doing different things on the page, then there's still a chance of compatibility issues. So any platform, the more that you kind of add on from different parties that has never had a chance to test all of these different apps on one store, then there's going to be maintenance costs, and that's why you want to choose a platform that has most of what you need and a bit more, so that you can grow into it. But you're not going to want something that has too few features for you, and you need to kind of add 10 apps before you even get started. 10's a kind of magic number here. And similarly, the choosing an e-commerce platform that has all bells and whistles that you're never going to use half of is probably not going to be appropriate for you, either from a sort of pricing point of view and maintenance point of view. So I think that's probably a fair response. But I share your I appreciate it was a bit of a rant, but it's a real struggle for merchants on your previous point around they've spent so much kind of money, whether it be on Magento or BigCommerce, and maybe going through a rebuild. And it's very easy to forget what came out of the box in your platform, and how you gradually over the years tailor it to your business. And then for many tech products, we talk about MVP. Often in kind of the e-commerce world, MVP is exactly what I have now, please, on this new platform. And that's, yes, it is very difficult to achieve when you've spent 5 years worth of sort of your agency retainer or internal dev time customizing it and making it kind of everything you want it to be. So I appreciate that pain for merchants, and so give them a bit of credit for that.
Yeah, that was a little bit of my snarky sarcasm, and I apologize for that. All right, so we have about 5-10 minutes left here. Just going a little bit back to the community aspect of BigCommerce. Is there a space for hackathons in this type of thing, where we're trying to create some solution and a group of developers come together and we do a hackathon on BigCommerce?
I'd say so. I've already hosted one internally. So I appreciate that, a little bit because I want to build more apps. But as we have multiple teams working internally on BigCommerce projects now, as well as myself and a few people contributing to the BigCommerce Apps Initiative, we wanted to kind of kick off a new financial year and a new set of objectives to expose more people to what it means to build a BigCommerce app. And so kind of stepping away from our project work for a day, we got together and picked a topic, did some brainstorming around how we might want to solve it, and then broke off into groups and experimented with building an app. And so I don't think being open source or not open source prevents the developer community from having a hack day. It's just how how do you add on functionality? Is it kind of by actually deploying code and calling kind of internal API and service contracts and things like that, or is it using public facing APIs? And so you can still be innovative in that space. And so I hope to, as I said earlier, I hope to encourage that, and hope to see some more hack days. I'd say my personal frustration with Magento hack days I've seen in the past is like I enjoyed it more when it was that kind of like, we've seen this problem on our projects, like wouldn't it be great if, and then look to solve it with a Magento extension. I was less personally, I was less excited when it became a sort of a, can I create a PR to Magento? I believe that's an exciting part of the Magento ecosystem, being able to do that. I think that's important for the Magento space. But I was more excited, and then it's going to be from my background as well, and that's why I'm innovation director, I guess. More excited where we just get to talk about the problems and then just solve them there and there, and it not look to try and create a solution that's going to be right for every Magento merchant ever, and be suitable for the core code base, but create something that is modular, that if it suits you, you can choose. That's something that I really like the idea of, and so I hope that we can have more, whether that be in the BigCommerce space or wherever. I don't think it's, as I say, I don't think it's restricted to open source world.
All right, so this next one is for John, and I'm just going to throw this out there as a community token. Big Titans. Are you seeing it? Big Titans. We'll do it. You're already doing it?
No, I'm not yet.
Well, just at least if you anything, just go back, because I will come to Manchester in 2022 or whenever we can go. And I'll be at Big Titans, and I'll wear all my BigCommerce swag for Big Titans, and then the big hack days that you guys are going to put on, and I'm very excited about it.
Nice, it's a date.
All right, so a couple things just before we wrap up here. How do you pronounce Hoofa?
Oh, you're asking the wrong guy. Hoover.
Hoover. Yeah, it would have been just easier if they just said Hoover. Like, just suck it up, say Hoover.
Yeah, they've got a marketing challenge in their hands.
All right. What else? How about, I'm trying to get this hashtag Mage Puppy started. And I can see that this whole time you've got a cat just hanging out in the background there. Do we need a mage kitten, or do you think we should just do Mage Puppy?
I think that already exists, doesn't it? I think Mage Cat or something. Mage Kittens already exists. That's a thing.
All right, so I need to find that hashtag and follow it. Mage Puppy, though, definitely needs to happen sooner than later, and I need some help with some traction around Mage Puppy. Do you think there'll ever be this sort of ground swelling passion around big something in that community, or do you think that the Magento community is unique in the fact that people put Mage in front of everything and then make some conference or some hashtag around it?
I've certainly seen people do that with big. I think that's one of the fun things with the name, is that you can play with it. But yeah, it's funny. Who knows what will happen with other platforms like BigCommerce. Magento was special in that way. But as I say, I think as soon as you bring like intelligent people together and like a lot of lovely people together, and as we had in the Magento space, those people exist in other ecosystems too. So I hope to see it again. But it's one that you can't make a recipe for. I don't know quite why it happened or what happened, but it happened, and it was, as I say, lovely to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that bringing all the intelligent people together, and then they invited me because they wanted somebody to make fun of and say, wow, that is just not the best idea ever, but thanks for coming. All right, so as we wrap up here, shameless plug, if you could just say whatever you want about whatever you want, go ahead and give us a shameless plug.
Sure thing. Well, agency first. So Space 48, remote first e-commerce agency, platform agnostic, so we'll help you guide you through that process between different platforms that are out there right now. That's for us, that's BigCommerce, Magento, and Shopify. And then myself, I'm working on our apps, particularly for BigCommerce, or specifically for BigCommerce. So the first one has now launched that helps automate assigning products to categories based on rules, and I have 2 or 3 more up my sleeve that will be coming soon. So watch this space.
Very exciting. All right, so then 2 things from my side. We've already done Mage Puppies, but I want to promote this idea of big titans, and I can't think of anybody better to talk to than John Woodall about big titans, and I think that he's just got to get behind it or it's never going to happen. I'll join him for that conference in Manchester in November of 2022. And I'll even offer somebody to help organize it with him. And then
I'm going to do the Austin version.
Yeah, the Austin version. Oh, I have my 2017 Magento Imagine shirt on. I wore my Austin one yesterday, 2016. Anyways, and then one thing I'm trying to promote is a hackathon in Orlando, Florida in January of 2022 for Adobe. So it would be a hackathon / unconference. And I really love the concept of the unconference and the way they organize it in Cologne. Cologne, Germany, the best smelling town in Germany. And so I want to get, you're welcome. I want to get behind this idea of having a conference in Orlando, Florida in January. I know it gets cold in Bath or in Manchester in January, but we have an extra cold. Well, you lived in Chicago, so you know what it's like. It gets cold in Chicago too. As much as people in Chicago complain about Minneapolis, it's only a 10 degrees difference. And if it's minus 10 in Chicago and minus 20 in Minneapolis, it's still minus frickin' cold. So Orlando, it's going to be 80 degrees or whatever that is in Celsius. So anyway,
that's about as it gets from our summer. So
that's my shameless plug. And then finally, hopefully the BigCommerce people are listening, and they should send me some swag and some buttons so I can put it on my microphone and I can start wearing it instead of all this Magento stuff. I'll even put a different picture up in the background.
Put my name down too. I'll get some BigCommerce swag. That sounds good.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Tom, this has been fun. What's the cat's name?
Scout.
Thank you, Scout, for joining us today. I actually have Sasha, one of our dogs, is here. She comes in, goes to bed, and then wakes up when I leave in the after work. So she is also here with me, and it's been fun. Thank you.
I've enjoyed it. Great to see you, Brent.
Cheers. Bye. Magento Creative, partnering with the client to help fulfill their strategic growth, serving the world as an Adobe Gold partner and BigCommerce Elite partner. Magento, the code of commerce. This episode has been sponsored by the partner of choice for technology, infrastructure, and enterprise-level digital solutions, an AWS Select Consulting partner, eWay Corporation, Forward Together. Thank you again for listening. My name is Brent Peterson, and it has been my pleasure to be your host today. Please rate and subscribe to Talk Commerce. New shows out every week.